Yes, as we speak, Samsung is launching the Note 20, because this is how they count: 8, 9, 10, 20. What a star alignment! Note 20, 2020. There should be some numerology in this. After they already did this with the S series, S10, S20, it's Note's turn. As you already know quite well, Samsung has two traditional flagship series: the S series, aka the Spring Collection, and the Note series, the Summer-Autumn Collection. Wow, time flies quite fast, even if you've been convicted to a couple of months of house arrest during this time. And on top of these two, north of $1,000, we have Flip and Fold. So we also got a new Flip 5G, an update of the Flip we've seen at the beginning of this year. God forbid is 5G, take care of your mental health. And Fold 2, which is not here yet. It seems it's gonna be available sometimes in September. But let's focus on Note, and before showing it to you, let me tell you what's interesting about this series, even if maybe it didn't cross your mind to sell some of your organs in order to buy yourself one of these. Theoretically speaking, the Note is the apex, the shrine of Samsung's technological prowess and know-how. The best phone in their lineup, all their expertise, the best hardware, the best components, all of them are stuffed into this series. Everything they tested along the year with the S series and others, in terms of SoCs, displays, cameras, find its ultimate expression in this second half of the year Note, plus a pen. An S Pen, mind my words, with all its capabilities more and more complex year over year. In other words, Note is Samsung S Class or 7 series. And maybe that's why this particular series is also their only series igniting fierce loyalties. Apple kind of those. I know people that always had just Note and nothing else. And my wife is still evoking her phone with a pen, I guess it was a Note 5, and how from then on no better phone was made. Truth is, my girls were pretty small back then, and it's a miracle that the phone survived after so much banana and apple it has been eating. So this is one aspect, that Note has its fanatic loyalists. And maybe that's why it's also the most conservative of the Samsung phones. Sounds paradoxical, isn't it? What I mean is that because of its fanatic loyalists, Note is avoiding doing sudden changes in surprising directions. These people do not want to be surprised, at least design-wise. They like it this way, and when you're paying more than $1,000 or euros on a phone, you really don't want to be surprised. In other words, the new Note is just like the old Note, but newer and better. And here it is, and I'll start explaining it. Yes, design-wise it looks just like the old one, and it's telling you the same story. It looks like the guiding principle for Samsung is don't fix it if it's not broken. It's conservative without being non-elegant or bulky, it's simple, it's just how I like it. This time there are two versions, Ultra, and I'm gonna focus on this one because it is the shizzle, the shrine, and the baby Note. For the poor, well, poor like in Switzerland, where being poor means you're driving your Rolls-Royce by yourself. But how is the Note 20 Ultra different? For example, now it has a 6.9-inch display, just like the S20 Ultra, instead of 6.8 as it is on the last year's Note. And I will express my first perplexity. Why on earth 6.9 and not 7? Come on, 6.9 is almost 7, so why not 7 in full? It's 0.1 inch, or is it like in prices, 699.99? To make you believe it's not that big, it's 6. No mate, it's actually 7, but hey, it's a psychological thing. You're thinking now that 7-inch is too large. Guess what? Not at all. And more on that, this phone has an excellent screen-to-body ratio. I don't know the exact percentage, but I would bet that it's at least 90%, which means that most of its front side is screen, so it's a lot of usable area, and not just built area, to use a real estate expression. So I say that they could have used a 7-inch display, no drama. Anyway, I'm just noticing they have their own calculations and reasons. And there's something else. While Note 20 Ultra's screen remained curved on its edges, the baby Note's display is flat, something rumored before this launch, and that seems to be fashionable once again. I also noticed that even if everybody was so excited about the idea of an under-the-screen front camera and that there were rumors pointing in this direction, Samsung decided otherwise. Yeah mate, there was some hysteria at some point. I remember some Samsung air conditioning ad or something like that. And in that video, there was some phone with an under-the-screen camera, and everybody was like, yeah, this should be the Note 20. Then they made the connection with some leaks and patents, and they've concluded it's Note 20. Well, no. They just proved once again that people just love fantasizing over the internet. But to be honest, I would have liked to see that. So, not now. Let's see now some other things. They switched the position for the volume and power buttons from left to right, and the S Pen from bottom right to bottom left. I'm not kidding. I love these companies. They do all their best to convince you at some point that's the right way, and the next year that the exact opposite is better. Anyway, I never liked the idea of those buttons on the left, so yeah, it's better this way. And last but not least, it's the triple camera module on the back of the Note 20 Ultra. And pay attention here. Not long ago, all the manufacturers were trying real hard to hide those cameras somehow on that bump, to make them more discreet, but now they are somehow carved in, digged into that module. And I can also tell you where this paradigm shift came from. It came with iPhone 11 Pro Max. Have you seen how the cameras are placed on the back of the Pro Max on the famous stove? They are so obvious, deliberately emphasized. Like Apple didn't try to hide them anymore, but the opposite, to emphasize them, to make them visible. Well, that's what Note 20 Ultra is also doing. And to understand it better, here's the camera module on the back, next to the S20 Ultras. Do you see that? While on the S20 Ultra the camera lenses are somehow covered by the module, on the Note they are separated and emphasized, like on the Pro Max. But we'll get soon enough of the cameras and we'll dive into details. And the colors. Now we have a pale green, also called mystic green, some sort of coppery pink called mystic bronze, and the black called, well, guess how? Mystic black, of course. So the colors are all about mysticism. Jokes aside, the colors are quite nice. And the aesthetic differences from the old Note end up here. And the question I'll try to answer here is actually two of them. First, if you're looking for a new flagship phone, is Note 20 the best choice, or at least one of the best choices? And second, if you already have a Note 10 or a Note 10 Plus, does the Note 20 or 20 Ultra worth the upgrade? Okay, if you stayed with me until now, it would be a pity not to stay a little longer to see what else the Note 20 has to offer. Short intro, ain't it? And if in this first part we talked about what Note is, about aesthetics and similarities, let's dive now into what's really special and different about this phone. And there's lots of it. Let's start with the cameras, right? All the more they made them so visible. I'll tell you from the beginning, the main camera on the Note 20 Ultra is the exact same with the one on the S20 Ultra, sporting the already famous 108 megapixel sensor. This sensor is also physically big, optically stabilized, with a very bright f1.8 25mm wide lens. This trio is completed with a 30mm ultra-wide f2.2 camera with a 12 megapixel sensor, also a lot smaller than the one on the main camera, physically speaking, and an 123mm tele, 5x if you're using zoom terms, also 12 megapixel, this camera being also optically stabilized. On the front end, there's a 10 megapixel f2.2 camera. This setup is quite similar on the Baby Note, at least in terms of aspect and configuration, the differences being on the inside. On the Baby Note, we have a 12 megapixel 26mm 1.8 main camera instead of the 108 megapixel sensor. The telephoto is also different. What we got here is a 64 megapixels f2 camera with a focal distance of 28mm. This last spec is a bit tricky. So what about it? The zoom is a 3x only, not 5x like on the Ultra, but I reckon that this is in fact all about sensor cropping. And that's all about pixels and millimeters. What does it do is a lot more important question than what it is. And the accent here is on the Pro Video mode. In other words, if you're a content creator, for instance, these new notes are here to help you. For instance, they shoot in 8K in that cinematic 21:9 format. Say what? Yep. And I'm not surprised, and you know why. That's because the bigger picture looks like this. Samsung is pushing right now affordable 8K TVs. Sure, affordable meaning we're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars or euros, just about thousands. Don't start a riot now about people do not having this kind of money, but you know what? Technology is still evolving and the earth is still spinning. What I mean is that Samsung is pushing it this way. You have an 8K capable phone, which can be nicely linked to an 8K TV, and you can send and watch your own content right there and right away. I ain't gonna get into details right now with this resolution, if it's good or bad, or if it's the right time, maybe some other time. And everything they put into this Pro Video mode is pointing in this direction. You even have two sets of settings, one for normal video and one for Pro Video. And in Pro Video, you have this possibility to shoot in 8K DCI. Besides other stuff like manually controlling white balance, ISO, shutter, or the sound recording. Speaking of, you can manually select the microphone you're using. The phone's microphones, USB-C like an external wired microphone, or a Bluetooth one, like in using its headphones. Look, these beans are their new headphones, and I found myself enjoying this idea of some headphones that actually do not penetrate my ears. After years and years of using the AirPods that penetrated my ears in all imaginable positions, I actually like these beans, these kidneys, even if you look like some senior with wedding in his ears when you're wearing them. But no matter, I like them as long as I'm not having something coming into my ear channel and nothing coming out of it. You know that silly joke about the AirPods, hey mate, something's coming out of your ear. So it's something new and quite nice. The colors are nice too. White looks good on them, even if it's a little boring and common, and this bronze is blingy enough. I guess some will miss the gold, and not any gold, that hip-hop gold. Well, that would be nice for some. And now back to the phone. So this Pro Video mode would be, in theory at least, for content creators, and with the Note 20 Ultra, Samsung finally understood that less is more. I'm talking about that stupid 100x zoom, which is now reduced to 50x, but now is somehow stabilized optically and electronically. Well, on the S20 Ultra, it was full of pixels and artifacts, and you definitely needed a tripod to counter the drunkenness of the image. Even now, it's not that good, but at least you're able to take some handheld photos with your neighbor living on the other side of your neighborhood or with the moon. I don't see any other reasons for it. For anything else, the 5x optical zoom being more than enough for a portrait, architectural details, or whatever you do with your phone. And now let's focus on the other key component of this new Note, the screen. And I have an intense feeling that is the absolute same with the one on the S20 Ultra. The same superb dynamic AMOLED 3200 by 1440 with a 120Hz refresh rate. And now the bullets, you know, those footnotes that come with everything that seems too good to be true. If you're choosing the 120Hz refresh rate, you gotta sacrifice the resolution. In this scenario, the resolution automatically goes down to Full HD+. If you choose the maximal resolution, that WQHD+, then your refresh rate decreases to 60 Hz. The reason of this sink or swim approach is the battery life. Even if the 4500 mAh on the Ultra and the 4300 on the Baby Note batteries seem big enough to withstand the consumption. But it looks that Samsung chose the cautious way. There's also rumors that the peak brightness on the Ultra tops over 1000 nits, so all the more, Samsung decided that it's not worth taking the risk having furious people with a depleted battery in less than a working day. With all these limitations, this ain't gonna happen, or at least that's what they think. Regarding the Baby Note, some serious cuts were made. Don't get me wrong, it's still a very good display, but it's not curved anymore, it's just flat, it's not a dynamic AMOLED, it's just a Super AMOLED, its resolution is just Full HD+, something like 2400 by 1080, and it has a fixed refresh rate at 60 Hz. You pay less, you get less, but of course this is the whole point of this Baby Note, to introduce you in this universe. But the real Note, the big boy's Note, is in fact the Ultra. Speaking of which, I obviously ran on its marvelous screen my obsession, Real Racing 3. Unfortunately, I couldn't install my own account on this particular test phone, and this is also why I wasn't able to run any benchmark on it neither. I wasn't allowed to do that, so we can only guess what it's capable of. In this version I've tested, there was a, well, not so loved by hardcore users, Exynos 990, the exact same that's on the S20 Ultra. I would have liked to have the Snapdragon 865 Plus that's available on the American version of the phone, an SoC I already tested on the ROG Phone 3. And it's fabulous. It's over 3 GB versus 2.7, and this last one is already a bit old. Consider also the fact that Apple is preparing a little over a month to come out with its new A14 on 5 nanometers. Not to speak that even the old A13 is an extremely hard to beat beast. So in this context, yeah, the Exynos 990 seems a bit outdated. On the other hand, in real life seems not to be the case. There wasn't any single moment while I played Real Racing 3 to feel the need for more speed or power. And that was until they kicked me out of the demo space. So this combination of a solid SoC, 120Hz display, a game that supports this, and the exceptional AKG powered sound is just brilliant. And all this power plant is completed with 12 GB of RAM and a quarter or a half of terabyte of storage, depending on the chosen configuration. On the Baby Note, the storage is limited to 256 GB, and you can also choose a cheaper version with less RAM, 8 instead of 12. Obviously, both of them can be transformed into some sort of PC thanks to that embedded DeX module, and trust me, the DeX is now far from being just another marketing gimmick. I installed it on my 16-inch MacBook Pro, which I use daily, and it's really nice. And when you connect your phone to an external display, its Windows-like interface is quite friendly and functional, and the interaction with peripherals like keyboard and mouse is really good. All you need is a Type-C USB to HDMI cable or the usual Type-C to Type-C cable if the external display is supporting this standard. And in this last scenario, you can even power the phone this way. I tried it and the experience is quite satisfying. So its functionality was heavily extended to the point where easy tasks like Office documents browsing, etc. can be done without needing a laptop. You should try it for yourselves. And speaking of functionality, there's also that S Pen, some kind of trademark for the Note series. Moving over from marketing blah blah, this new version, at least on the Ultra, is even faster. The latency was decreased to 9 milliseconds, which means there's not a trace of delay between the moment you write and what the screen is displaying. The experience starts to look like ink and paper. On the Baby Note, the latency stayed at 26 milliseconds, but on my tests, I never felt any sort of disturbing lag or delay. Of course, the air gestures were improved, but I ain't gonna go into much details here. As of sturdiness, they look and feel sturdy enough, and while the Ultra has a Gorilla Glass 7 protection, it's only the 5 version on the Baby Note. Again, it's aimed at reducing the price. Both of the phones support 5G. As I already said in the beginning of this year, this is not some extra feature anymore, it's becoming the standard. And of course, Wi-Fi 6. Well, and now after we've seen what they are capable of, let's see what they stand for. The Note is positioning itself for being more than just a phone, but rather one device to rule them all. A complex one being a little of everything. A phone, a digital agenda through that S Pen, a laptop through DeX and its abilities to connect to an external display and peripherals, a gaming console because of its power, specifications and the ability to use a controller, and by the way, they say it's gonna be bundled with some gaming online services, a long time promise. Well, until then, let me remain a bit skeptic. I'm pretty happy with my GeForce Now account, which unfortunately I wasn't able to test on this phone in the short time I spent with it. Note 20 wants to be some sort of hub, some main device capable of replacing anything else. It's an ambitious idea, and I would say that in its Ultra trimming is quite close to that purpose. And that's why I'm not that surprised about the prices. When I hear of prices north of the psychological mark of $1,000 or euros on any phone, I tend to be cautious, but that's exactly what Note stood for from the very beginning. An exclusive device targeted to a quite wealthy business niche. Not everybody buys a Note, it's not exactly what you'd call a mass product, and many of those buying it are also really using it. I don't know right now the prices in the States, but in Europe they're gonna be 950 euros for the Baby Note and 1300 for the Ultra. And that's for the base models. Some extra RAM or storage will cost you even more. Ah, and one more thing, there's also a new watch, the Galaxy Watch 3, but about that some other time. So, before closing this video, let's answer to our two questions. If you already have a Note 10, should you upgrade to a Note 20? My short answer is no. The longer answer would be that Note 10 is still a very good and beautiful phone, and Note 20 looks more like an incremental evolution, not a revolution, even if it has some substantial improvements, but not that big or revolutionary to throw away your Note 10. The next question was, if you're looking to buy a new high-end phone, is Note 20 a good option? My answer is definitely yes. If you want to stick your fingers into this Note universe, then Note 20 and especially the Ultra won't disappoint you. I'm saying especially the Ultra because from my point of view, this is also the real Note, the one that defines the brand. Now, if you're in the position of not having those extra 350 euros, well, the Baby Note is an as good as possible option. But you have to turn your back on some of the most important features. No 120Hz, no curved screen, no 108 megapixel camera, but you have some money left in your pocket. That's my opinion on the Note 20 and Note 20 Ultra. Let me hear now yours. Did you like them? What do you think about them? Which one did you like, the Baby or the Ultra? How new do they seem to you? If there are some of you that own a Note 10, what do you think? Does it worth an upgrade? What about the comparison with the S series or the likes from Apple? I'm really curious on your opinions and answers. Please leave them all in the comments section, and I promise I will read as many as I can. And while you're here, if you liked or enjoyed this video, please do not hesitate to subscribe here on TechniQualities. We'll work hard to repay your confidence, and we thank to each and every one of you for this. Well, this is it guys, stay safe and wish you all the luck in the world.